Thanks. Yeah, again, my name is Ted Doherty, historian and author of the book Knott's Halloween Haunt, A Picture History. Welcome to your Ghost Town Haunt History Tour. For those of you that don't know, some of you do, Knott's Scary Farm is the longest running Halloween-themed event at any theme park in the entire world. All others can trace their roots back to here at Knott's Berry Farm. Despite the various changes that this park has gone through since the first haunt in 1973, shadows of its past still stand today. So as opposed to giving you like a play-by-play on how the event started and how it's grown over the years, I'm going to take you to some historic hotspots here in Ghost Town to help you understand why these seemingly random locations indeed have great relevance to the haunt's history. So for starters, we're standing here on what is technically known as Main Street in Ghost Town, but in about the past 15 or so years, this is referred to as Fog Alley in the monster community. It's shrouded in fog, spooky lighting, monsters lurking in the shadows, and to me, this is where I consider the heart of Ghost Town when it comes to the Halloween haunt. During the event's debut, the Knott family created all sorts of entertainment to help establish this Halloween party concept. They had a host, Seymour, the master of macabre, who was a famous television horror host at the time. He was over in the theater. They had live monsters in the log ride mine ride. All of the stores and food services were decorated for Halloween. And they also set up kind of carnival-like sideshows here in the midways of Ghost Town. However, there was another very important form of entertainment in the midways of Ghost Town, and that was the Wild West stunt show personnel who were dressed as monsters to roam the streets of Ghost Town, and they were the very first Ghost Town street monsters. So many, many years later, when I worked here as one of the Slider Monsters, I worked here in Ghost Town, and I wanted to work right here. I wanted to work in the heart of Ghost Town. I wanted to be in this fog. I wanted to walk the same steps that those stunt personnel did back in 1973. I wanted to be among these eerie buildings. And these buildings, in fact, have great relevance to the haunt's history. For example, over here we've got the barber shop, the laundry, the assay office. The displays inside these structures are known as peek-ins, and they're spread throughout Ghost Town. But in the earlier years of Halloween Haunt, they were redecorated for the event and named Startling Peek-ins. They were spiffed up at spooky lighting, and we got some pictures here that show what they were like. Spooky lighting, props, sound effects, they put masks on the mannequins, but in the early years of the Peek-ins, they had live monsters that hid inside to pop out and scare the unsuspecting onlooker. Now, those Peek-in monsters were not the same type of employees as the roaming stunt personnel. The Peek-in monsters were hired from outside of Knott's Berry Farm solely to work these Peek-ins. And it was one of those Peek-in monsters that played a very important role in the growth of the Halloween haunt. And we're standing here in front of the sheriff's office Peek-in, and just as with all of the others, this was redecorated for the earlier Halloween haunts. A very special occurrence took place here during the 1977 Halloween haunt, specifically the second night. The performer that was hired to work as a monster inside this Peek-in that year was a guy named Bob Vernon. Bob worked his first night of haunt that year without incident. Second night, he shows up to work, gets into costume, gets into makeup, and guests are about to come into the park. He shows up to his Peek-in, and just as it is now, the door was locked. Guests are now coming inside the park, so in sort of a frantic rush, Bob tracks down his supervisor and says, listen, people are in the park, my Peek-in's locked, I gotta get in. And so the supervisor races over here, is fumbling through keys after key, and he doesn't have the right key. So the supervisor says, like in sort of a nonchalant way, listen, Bob, it's gonna take me some time to find the right key. In the meantime, I don't know, why don't you just go out and scare these people? And that's exactly what Bob did. However, he did so in a very aggressive manner. The guests were running, screaming, terrified. It was pandemonium right here. After about 15 or so minutes doing that, he looked over to this porch right over here, and standing in the shadows were two supervisors with their arms crossed, but they were smiling. They loved what Bob was doing. So much, in fact, that the very next haunt night, they pulled all of the Peek-in monsters, to work in Ghost Town and scare aggressively the way that Bob was doing. And it set a new standard for Knott's Scary Farm, because no longer was it the roaming stunt personnel dressed as monsters. Now people were hired from the outside to work and scare in Ghost Town. Next, I am going to take you to the location that housed the most gruesome item to ever appear at Knott's Scary Farm, and it's right over here. We're standing in front of the Crafts Barn, which was originally known as the Livery Stable. Most people attending Halloween Haunt nowadays probably have no idea that this structure housed two extremely influential mazes during the 1979 and 1980 Halloween Haunts. Back in the late 70s, the designs for these mazes were created by in-house personnel at Knott's Berry Farm. But in an effort to bolster the production value of the mazes, the Knott family went to an outside design firm to create a maze for them. They found the father and son team of Doug and Don Williamson, who were designers for Pageant of the Masters. If you don't know what Pageant of the Masters is, it's a long-time running show over in Laguna Beach. It's a live recreation of classic art pieces. So you'd have like a Mona Lisa or like a Rembrandt that's recreated with live actors and sets bringing the original piece to life. And Doug and Don Williamson were set designers for Pageant of the Masters and hired by Knott's Berry Farm to design the 1979 maze, Black Bart's Trail of Terror, which was right here. It was extremely big budget for its time. It had tight, narrow walkways, cavern-like walls, live snakes and rats behind glass, of course, video projections, skeletons dressed in as cowboys, sets of saloons and jail cells, and even a full-blown real horse skeleton that was positioned to be pulling a buggy. But that's not the most gruesome item ever to appear at Knott's Scary Farm. In fact, despite the big budget of Black Bart's, it was not very scary. It looked neat, but was not very scary. The Knott family were looking to the long lines at the log ride and the mine ride, and the people completely flipping out by the live monsters inside those attractions. So not really satisfied with the spooky museum type of setting, they brought the designs back in-house with a fresh attitude, and the result was the 1980 maze, Tomb of Terror, which was also right here. This time they packed the maze full of maze monsters that aggressively scared people. And as great as those monsters may have been, they were not what was so gruesome about this. It was the item on display in the final room. A true, absolutely real, human mummified corpse named Count Demonicus. Now, Count Demonicus was on tour at the time in the carnival circuit and rented by Knott's Berry Farm to be the big finale of this 1980 Tomb of Terror maze. People flipped out seeing Count Demonicus. People were scarred by seeing this real corpse. Certainly not something you can get away with doing nowadays. Mm-hmm. But as gruesome as he may have been, and as neat as the livery stable may have been as a maze location, it's not the most relevant maze location in Ghost Town. That honor goes to a structure right around the corner, and I'll take you there next. And that location marks the most significant maze location in the entire history of Halloween Haunt. Now, some of the most famous haunt mazes have been housed inside that structure. The first was 1980's Dr. Alucard's Chamber of Horrors. Alucard spelled backwards is Dracula, so you can kind of get an idea of the theme. 1981 was the big budget Realm of Darkness, which is a full medieval theme with castle walls, dungeons, fantasy type characters. And then the late 1980s, one of the most famous haunt mazes ever was housed inside Bates Motel, which was a sort of twisted nod to the movie Psycho. And as the maze progressed, it sort of ended up being like a hodgepodge of classic haunted house elements like polka dot room, checkered room, that type of thing. And then through the 90s, mazes such as Mother Noose's Scary Tales and Ghost Town Dead and Breakfast, and more recently, Hatchet High, Doll Factory. Now, of course, they have Pinocchio and Strung in there. And as great as all those mazes have been, all of them combined do not add up to why this structure is so relevant in the events of history. The reason is right around back of it, and I'll take you there next. Well, back before Bigfoot Rapids was here, this was an employee parking lot. The park just ended right here. And in the summer of 1982, there was a summer show placed back here that would have been backstage named Colonel Howe's Traveling Circus, which was a full big top with circus performers. And at the end of the summer, the circus performers left, the big top stayed and housed one of the most innovative mazes in haunt's history, 1982's The Terrifying Trail of Jack the Ripper. 5,000 square feet, 2, 3, 4-story high building facades were created. Complete sewer systems with running water were created to replicate the London sewers. Cutting-edge video effects and audio effects were used. And they even used Peter Foy's flying effects, which is the apparatus used by Broadway performers to make characters fly across the stage. The maze was very influential in the haunt's history because it set a new standard in the production value of these mazes. Every maze from that point on needed to be as good or better than Jack the Ripper, which leads us to the mazes that we see today that are filled with this cutting-edge technology. But as great as Jack the Ripper was, that's still not why this spot is so important in the haunt's history. It was in 1977 that direction came from Marion Knott herself to create a new attraction for the Halloween haunt. The lines were astronomical for the log ride and the mine ride and for the theater. She realized that Knott's Berry Farm needed to create something to help alleviate these long lines. The result was the very first maze ever constructed solely for the Halloween haunt, 1977's The 10 Chilling Chambers, and you are standing right where that maze was. It was not inside the dance hall, it wrapped around the dance hall. It started off over in Boot Hill, went along a bridge that's no longer there, along the railroad tracks right to where we are here, and out by the schoolhouses where it exited. The maze was an immediate smash hit and set a new standard for Knott's Berry Farm. Every single year from that point on, they create these mazes. Every Halloween event in the world that has some sort of maze can trace its roots directly to that 1977 10 Chilling Chambers maze. And that is why this location is so relevant in the haunt's maze history, because without it, who knows where this event would be today. So please know that there's hundreds of little historic haunt hotspots spread throughout the entire park, like those I've shared with you tonight, from Camp Snoopy to Fiesta Village, Boardwalk. So this is just a little taste to hopefully help you have a better appreciation when you attend haunt this year on its incredible legacy. So now maybe you'll realize that not every haunt shadow contains a monster, but maybe one of these historic hotspots. So again, my name is Ted Doherty, author of the book Knott's Halloween Haunt, A Picture History. Thank you.